It's difficult to exceed expectations when you're the #1 overall pick, but Myles Garrett is in that neighborhood. The Browns' all-pro edge rusher went public last week with his trade request, saying he wants out of Cleveland. Garrett has made the playoffs just twice in 8 years. There, the 2023 NFL Defensive Player of the Year has 2 years left on his deal, but no more guaranteed salary. Let's take a deeper look at his career by the numbers. Since entering the league back in 2017, Garrett has 102.5 sacks. That's second only to T.J. Watt for the most in the NFL over that span. He's got 59 pressures last season, trailing only Trey Hendrickson for most in the NFL. And the only player with more pressures since 2017 is Aaron Donald. It's been said the best ability is availability, and Myles Garrett has certainly been available. Over the last 4 seasons, the 4-time All-Pro has missed just 2 games. We bring back senior NFL writer for ESPN.com, Bill Barnwell. There will be suitors, Bill, plenty of them. You looked into this. How much would it cost, should it cost, to pry a game record in his prime away from Cleveland?
1,200 points on the Jimmy Johnson chart, which we've all memorized. Okay, maybe we haven't all memorized the Jimmy Johnson chart, but look through history and look at these times when you see guys with multiple first-team All-Pro appearances before they turn 30 get traded. You're looking at a very similar range for a lot of these deals. On the low end, maybe a Tyreek Hill trade where it was 5 picks, but a first-rounder towards the very end of the first round. Or flip it. You want to get that high pick, that premium selection. Look at the Randy Moss trade to the Raiders. That was the 7th overall pick and a linebacker and a late-round selection. So really, it's kind of where the Browns should settle in here. Either one premium pick towards the bottom of the top 10, or maybe a bigger package starting with the pick at the end of the field. You really had a character to expect, 2 first-rounders, 3 first-rounders. I know Browns fans want that kind of, franchise-altering haul, but it's just tough for a player approaching 30, even one as good as Myles Garrett.
All right, knowing that, Bill, which teams do you think should be interested in swapping some picks or some draft capital or players for Myles Garrett?
Just about 30 or 31 of the 32 teams in the NFL should be interested. I'll give you a few that stand out to me, though, and I'll start in Detroit, where we saw, of course, that Lions defense so banged up with injuries over the course of the second half of the season. They lost Aiden Hutchinson. Marcus Davenport got injured early on in the year, and they just did not have enough pieces by the time the year went on. They've been looking for that second pass rusher next to Hutchinson, who's a superstar. Obviously, they have some cap space to work with, one of the youngest teams in the league. That would be the kind of go all in, over the top move for the Detroit Lions. Flip it to the NFC East. The Washington Commanders makes sense to me. A team that, of course, arrived ahead of schedule this year. A young quarterback on a rookie deal. Jaden Daniels gives you a lot of flexibility elsewhere on your roster. Dante Fowler, who was their leading pass rusher this year, 1-year deal, a free agent. They could afford to add a star on the edge. And then I'll throw a team that you feel like has everything already. What about the Philadelphia Eagles, where we know Howie Roseman loves adding defensive linemen, edge rushers. That's what they're going to do, what their core is. They spend a lot of money on offense, not that much money on defense. Josh Sweat, who's so good in the Super Bowl, is a free agent. Milton Williams is a free agent. If they could just move that Bryce Huff contract, which is kind of onerous, $17 million a year or so, if they can just get that off their books somehow, they have the money to make a Myles Garrett trade work. And I know it's not common for a Super Bowl winning team to add a Hall of Fame player in the prime of his career during the offseason. But hey, Howie Roseman nailed the 2024 offseason. What would be an even better start to the 2025 offseason than nailing this trade and getting Myles Garrett in Eagles colors?
Yeah, that is the cream of the NFC right there. You have the top seed, the Commanders, who reached the conference championship game, and the Super Bowl champs all on your panel right there. The rich get richer, perhaps. We'll see how it plays out. For more on this, go to ESPN.com.
His best football is behind him. We saw that perhaps in this past season, but also they feel like they just want a new direction. There are cap implications to releasing him that they can spread out over the next few seasons. Ultimately, they can move on without taking a major financial hit. They felt like this is the right time to do that, and so now they'll look toward perhaps free agency or perhaps the draft to replace him.
Now, Rodgers' struggles weren't exclusive to New York. He was underwhelming during his last season in Green Bay as well, ranking outside the top 20 in QBR, yards per attempt, and turnovers to close his chapter with the Packers. He missed 2023, of course, with the Achilles injury in the season opener, but this season the struggles continued with the Jets as Rodgers went 25th in QBR. Senior NFL writer for ESPN.com, Bill Barnwell, had this on Blue Sky. Quote, I was skeptical of the Aaron Rodgers trade, but even I didn't have worse record than Zach Wilson in the range of outcomes. Bill, this all failed spectacularly. That is for sure. It's quite a humbling coda on the end of Rodgers' career. If he does decide, though, to play another year, is there a soft landing for him somewhere?
Yeah, I really believe there's a spot that makes sense for Aaron Rodgers and for a team that is going to need a veteran quarterback because of what Aaron Rodgers does best, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers, we know that offense not always the most exciting, but they want to end their drives with a kick, either a field goal, an extra point, or a punt. They want to protect the football. And at this point, Aaron Rodgers is not the guy he was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but he can protect the football. Last 10 games of this season, only 4 interceptions. So on field, I think it makes sense. Off field, I don't know if Mike Tomlin's going to be thrilled at the idea of, your starting quarterback going on a vacation at the beginning of training camp the way he did for the Jets last year. So maybe some off-field connections to make there. But on-field, I think the fit does make sense for a Steelers team that has Justin Fields and Russell Wilson hitting free agency.
Yeah. No trips to Egypt if you're a Steeler, that's for sure. Bill giving us his thoughts there. He's coming back in just a few minutes with some possible landing spots for Myles Garrett after his trip.
Likely in more ways than one. The glow of a Super Bowl championship outshined by only the bling awaiting the champs. Thursday, the Philadelphia Eagles were fitted for their Super Bowl rings. Jalen, Saquon, and all the digits on that dynamic D sized and fitted for the most coveted piece of jewelry in football. Of course, the man who orchestrated Philly's offense was being fit for a Saints quarter zip today. Kellen Moore introduced as the new boss in New Orleans. He inherits a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 4 years and finished in the bottom third of the NFL in points and passing yards per game. Alvin Kamara is still there. Derek Carr, too. New Orleans picks 9th overall, but there is a lot of work to do.
This is the start of an incredible place. This place truly is a special place for my family, for the opportunities we've had the last couple of weeks to win a Super Bowl in the Caesars Superdome, and to now become the head football coach of the New Orleans Saints. I think this is a talented roster. We played here week 3. We took it down to a minute left to finally score a touchdown when I was in Philadelphia. It was a really challenging game. And so throughout this season, you've seen it. Obviously, injuries were a challenge this year, and those things sometimes are challenging, uncontrollable circumstances. And so we recognize there's so much good going on here. We want to embrace the good. Don't lose any of the good.
All right, y'all. Let's talk about something that's got Cowboys fans scratching their heads and Micah Parsons downright fired up. The Dallas Cowboys, one of the most storied franchises in American football, have a habit of sitting on their hands when free agency rolls around. And now, even their own star linebacker is speaking up about it. Parsons ain't holding back, folks. After watching another season slip through Dallas's fingers, he's calling for some real action. The talent is there. We've just got to be aggressive the same way other teams did, Parsons told the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. I don't want to sit back and watch other teams build and us stay the same. Definitely some call to action. He's got a point. While the Cowboys have made solid draft picks, including Parsons himself back in 2021, their reluctance to make big free agency moves is putting them in a tough spot. Take last season, for example. The Cowboys had a glaring need in the run game, but instead of making a move, they let Derrick Henry head over to the Baltimore Ravens, where he tore up the field for nearly 2,000 yards and led the league in touchdowns. And if that wasn't bad enough, they had to watch Saquon Barkley leave the Giants and sign with the Eagles, only to have one of the most dominant seasons in recent history, carrying Philly all the way to a Super Bowl title. Meanwhile, Dallas, their run game ranked 6th from the bottom. That's the kind of decision-making that makes fans want to pull their hair out. Parsons is sending a clear message. The Cowboys need to stop sitting back and start making moves. I want to see us become aggressive and get some players that will come in and make an impact, and he said, I want to see us bring back our own players. That's just as important. Let's see what we can do there. And maybe, just maybe, he'll get his wish. Stephen Jones, Jerry's right-hand man, recently hinted that the Cowboys are finally willing to rethink their approach, saying they'd take a real deep dive into building up the roster, whether it be through the draft or free agency. But talk is cheap, and fans want to see action. After a brutal 7-10 season, the Cowboys shook things up by parting ways with head coach Mike McCarthy, but their choice to promote Brian Schottenheimer instead of bringing in fresh leadership has left plenty of folks wondering if this franchise is truly serious about winning championships. So the real question is, will Jerry and Stephen Jones finally wake up and make the bold moves needed to turn things around? Or are Cowboys fans in for another round of déjà vu? What do y'all think? Will Dallas break the cycle? Or is this just another offseason of empty promises?